This is the Chefpreneur podcast, where we inspire professional cooks to take on greater risk to build a personal chef business for themselves. Now, here's your host, Andres Hinojosa.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Chefpreneur podcast. I am your host, Andres Hinojosa. Thank you guys all for joining in with me again today. I appreciate you guys supporting this podcast. You know, I've been really excited to first launch this podcast, and we've just been getting some great feedback and great results on the show, and I really appreciate you guys all tuning in and listening. So with that being said, today I want to just dive in to our topic today, and we're going to be discussing about setting up your business as a personal chef. Now, one of the things that I find that chefs have troubles with the most is feeling like setting up the business is something that's super complex, super complicated, and they feel like they're not very business savvy. A lot of us feel like we're not very business savvy, and I get it. I understand that. I was once where you were at, and I was feeling like a little bit overwhelmed when I first started my business. But then as I started to dive in and figure some stuff out, it's actually not as hard as you think. So we're going to be discussing that on the podcast today. And the first thing is that once you make the decision to actually start your own business, you obviously need to get all the permissions and things from your local government, business license, et cetera, to really run and operate your business. Now, that sounds really, really scary at times, and some people could be really intimidated by that, but I'm actually here to just let you know that it's actually not that complicated, okay? One of the first things I always suggest to anybody opening up their own business, especially your personal chef business as a cook or a chef, is you actually want to choose your business name. So you want to register what they call a fictitious business name. And usually you do this at your local county clerk's office or somewhere where, you actually have a count of where you're actually wanting to register the name. And basically all it means, it's a fancy term, fictitious business name. It's a fancy term of like what you're able to call your business or do business under, like the name under which you could do business. Now, you could call your business anything from, I could call my business Chef Andres if I wanted to, or if there's a Chef Matt out there, or Chef Stephanie, or whatever you'd like to call your business. Obviously, it's your name, but you can also pick from various names if you wanted it to be something different than that. Basically, it's just giving you legal rights to use that name in your jurisdiction or in your area that you're in. So it doesn't sound super complicated. Of course, I'm not as privy as to what is all out there in every single county and every single location or spot in the United States. However, I can say, though, that here in San Diego, it's a pretty easy process. I go to my local county clerk's office and I just file for a fictitious business name. Of course, I have to check if one exists first, because obviously I can't use the name that somebody else is using, which is the reason why obviously I'm registering mine as well, so that someone else can't use your name. And you get registered, you file it. I think here in San Diego, it's like $45. You pay the fee. And a little caveat about, San Diego's filing fictitious business name is it's pretty straightforward, because you basically pick a name. What I like about it as well is you could pick up to, I think it's 3 or 4 additional names at $5 a pop, which makes it really easy and simple to kind of kill maybe 4 or 5 names that you were thinking of, just so that it covers a majority of what people, would possibly try to, if they were trying to steal the name of your business, it kind of covers you for them not being able to do that. For instance, my business is Dinner with a Chef, and I have registered Dinner with a Chef, Dinner with the Chef. I have a long list of other businesses that are similar, or the names, I guess you'd say, not businesses, but names that are very similar to the business name that I have, just to cover and protect myself. So that's one of the first things that I would do. One of the second things that you also need to do is to obviously acquire a business license in your area. Again, this depends on your local government or your local city. Here in California, it goes by city for your business license. So San Diego does not require a business license to do business in the actual city of San Diego, but there are a lot of inner cities or cities in San Diego County that do require you to have a business license. So you want to just check your local area and do that. Now, as far as the biggest question I do get from other chefs when they're starting their own businesses do I need some sort of a food permit or health permit? Now, the beautiful thing about being a personal chef is that you're technically providing a service to someone. So really, you're not, unless you're prepping at a commissary kitchen, or what they call kind of like a commercial kitchen, a community kitchen, somewhere that you might be renting as like a licensed facility to make food and then bring it to people's homes, that's a little bit of a different story, because obviously you're needing you have a licensed kitchen that you're working out of, and you would need some permits and things like that to even be able to rent that commercial space of a kitchen. So that's a little different, but for the most part, for an actual personal chef business, if you're not meal delivering, which that's what that would be, you're going into the client's home and you're cooking in their kitchen with their equipment in their, in front of them, and they're reimbursing you back for the groceries. And so really, they're just paying you for your service. So it actually is kind of a nice, I don't want to say gray area, because that's not the right word, is that basically they're just paying you to perform some services based upon how skilled you are as a chef, right? You're able to cook food, and they're going to hire you to come and cook some food in their house. And so what's really cool is, like, of course, I have a food handler's card, as they call it, of course, and I'm also a safety manager with food handling. But you know what? It's unfortunately, it's not necessarily necessary for you to start a personal chef business. Realistically, you want to go through that just to obviously be able to tell your clients that you are kind of certified in food safety. That makes them feel a little more comfortable, but it actually isn't a legal requirement. Now, I could be, I'm talking mostly about, of course, California, but in your state or in your area where you live in the United States, of course, I would want you to do research and just see if there's any additional certification or anything that you need as far as food handling to do business in your area. I personally don't know of any areas that require that. However, there could be areas that do require some sort of level of food handlers courses that you have to take, or a food handler's permit that is required to do business in that area. So just make sure you check your local government with that. Once you kind of file your fictitious business name, you kind of get on the ball with your business license and all the licensing or certification you need for that, which again, it's not overwhelming. It shouldn't be tons of things that you need. I would say then the most important thing that you have to get is definitely going to be your liability insurance. Now, this is something that I preach on, because you cannot not do business. It's so bad to do business without liability insurance, especially as a personal chef. Okay, so I know there's personal chefs out there that don't have liability insurance, and it's just not wise, because if something happens, God forbid something happens to the client, they get sick off your food, or you break something in their home that's very expensive, or just any accident that can come up, you want something that's going to protect you. So I don't even want to say that I highly recommend it. I almost think it's a necessity to have your own liability insurance, being a personal chef, that I would strongly say you should not do business without at least that piece. Of course, you need to have legal, business licensing and things like that properly set up for you to do business in your area. But without a shadow of the doubt, the biggest and most important thing is going to have to be that liability insurance. So I recently just had an incident in my business where one of the chefs that I contracted, or that works in my business, in my company, was cooking. And, he took all the proper steps. He was grilling. It was an amazing evening. He was doing great. They loved the food. Well, he kept telling me that he was smelling wood. And he told me that, during the day after he was done with the event, he actually called me in the evening and told me, hey, I was smelling something weird. I don't know what it was, but I was thinking it's a bonfire, but that's the only thing out of the ordinary, that happened. And so I was like, okay, no worries, but he said everybody loved the food and the evening went great. Well, I woke up at 4 a.m. and I get this email that is just, it literally puts a shiver down my spine. And the client was, saying that their grill burnt down. It was raging flames. The fire department was there. They were up all night. It couldn't have burned the house down. They could have died. It was this severe, tragic event. And it was very, very scary for me when I read that email. I mean, I was waking up, and that's the email I woke up to. And so the first thing I did was I, of course, called my chef and said, hey, man, what happened? Was everything okay when you left? And he's like, yeah. So he wrote up a statement claiming exactly what did. We did find out that as time went on. So I ended up, we did find out that it was actually a faulty grill. But before I get to that point, I was the client finally called me after a bit in the morning. We discussed about it. She was saying that the chef left the grill on and that it completely went up in flames. Now, so one thing I want to advise you guys is that it's really hard when you're put in a position. You never want to basically say that you're right and your client is wrong, or vice versa. And with liability insurance, it protects these types of things that happen anyway, these incidents. But beyond that, it's more about trying to dive into the situation and get it resolved quickly. And, you don't want a headache like that looming over you. And I'm not trying to scare you guys out there on this type of stuff either, because this is a 1 in a million thing that, things that happen if you take the proper steps and when you have kind of guidelines and processes and systems in place when you go to do an event, which we definitely provide in the Chefpreneur program. We have processes and systems that teach you and guide you on how to do things correctly and the appropriate steps to do things, and making sure you're turning off the stoves and the ovens, and making sure, you're crossing the T's and dotting the I's. So getting back to the story, the client was claiming that, the grill was left on and it was at, 700 or 800 degrees. And of course, we cook as chefs with grills on high. I mean, it's going to be hot. And so, again, I'm not trying to demean the situation. I'm not trying to demean the client, because obviously my heart goes out and I want to make sure that we resolve this situation as fairly and as quickly as possible. So as I'm discussing this with her, I just said, hey, why don't you just go ahead, find out what's going to happen. She said that she wanted to, investigate a little bit, and get the reports from the fire department and so forth and so on. So what we found out was that unfortunately the grill underneath was built with some wood, and it's a built-in grill. And long story short, when the chef was using the grill on high heat, it literally was residual heat. There was no physical flame that started and ignited the wood on fire, but it did get so hot. But we found that it was sitting on wood, which of course is not necessarily up to code here in the state of California, or any grill necessarily usually build it with brick or concrete or something like that in that nature. And so unfortunately the grill, I believe, was sitting on the wood, and and it was hot. The grill was off, but the residual heat there was still so hot that it actually tindered the wood a little bit and caused it to start on fire down the road in the middle of the night. So it was kind of a scary situation, but it's all been resolved. And, liability insurance covers these types of situations and these accidents. And so you're protected when it comes to these types of things, and you can feel like you have more peace of mind. And yeah, it's going to be a little scary, and yeah, things are going to happen. But for the most part, you don't need to, you won't have tons of situations where you're using your liability insurance, but it's one of those things that you have to have, because if something does go wrong, you want to make sure that you're protected, and you want to make sure that you're also putting forth your best name and integrity in front of your clients, right? You want to make sure that you have something to protect yourself to resolve the situation. More so, of course, whether it's our fault or not, we want to resolve the situation. That's exactly what I told the client. I said, regardless of whose fault it was, nobody was hurt. That's the first and most important thing. Number two, we want to get resolved. We want to resolve this as quickly and as, painless as possible. And so if that meant me giving her free service for that evening and don't even worry about the bill, then, so be it, because obviously it's a traumatic event for her. She's waking up in the middle of the night. She's smelling something on fire. She looks out, there's a raging fire in her backyard. I mean, it's a scary situation, and we get that. So again, I'm not trying to scare you guys into this, but in a way, I'm trying to scare you in the way of seeing that you need liability insurance, right? And you need that to cover yourself. So, setting up your business, again, those are the key steps in setting up your business, right? It's setting up your fictitious business name, getting any business license, any business licensing to do business in your area, as well as any maybe food handling or any certifications you might need to handle food. And then also, your liability insurance, which is extremely important. Now, one of the things that I will tell you about this is that when you're setting up your business, you also want to look at, how you want to perceive yourself. If you want to set yourself up as if you want to just be basically self-employed, which, you're using your own social security number and you're just doing business that way, or if you want to create a limited liability company or an LLC and put it under that. Now, I will say, depending on the state that you're in, creating an LLC can be kind of pricey. I know here in California, it's $800, so it is kind of pricey. It's $800 a year. In other states, it's not as dramatic. It's actually pretty inexpensive, and that actually does add additional layers of kind of protection for you, because it limits the liability of you personally if something would happen. So I'll give you an example of that. Let's say you have an LLC and it's Chef John's, Gourmet Cuisine LLC, right? And he creates an LLC for himself. He's doing business under a company, under a legal, formed corporation or a company, a limited liability company, and something like this happens. First, he has his liability insurance, but if Chef John owns 3 cars and owns his house outright, and he has some assets, those assets his personal assets are protected. So if they try to sue him, they can't come after his personal assets. They can just sue the company. Now, there is some personal liability that people can just individually sue you for, but usually when you're talking about a claims as a business doing something, when you're actually doing things as a business, you're not going to be, personally held, liable on your own stuff, where they can't come after your assets. And so that kind of gives you that extra added layer of protection. For it to get that bad has to be a pretty bad situation. It's probably extremely rare. And of course, I'm not a licensed attorney. So of course, this is all things that I've learned, but I know enough to where that's the actual avenue that you're going to get protected a little bit more. So some of this stuff is not necessarily the fun stuff of running your business or setting up your business, but it's not complicated. I think too many chefs and cooks out there who have thought about starting their own business, they think that it's some crazy, hairy, scary monster that they can't get their head around, that they don't know what to do next, how to set it up. And they think that there's all this paperwork and craziness involved, and it's really not that way at all, right? You can get all this stuff set up in a matter of 30 days or less. I mean, it's not rocket science, and it's not super extreme complicated. So I do want to encourage you guys to understand that, because I think that is one of the biggest fears, as most entrepreneurs have, and even as chefs, of course, and cooks even more, right? Because we're so good at cooking and we're so good at doing what we're passionate about, but unfortunately we feel like we come short when it comes to business aptitude and setting up a business, and it just sounds very daunting, and it's really not, guys. It's really not. So those are the main points I wanted to kind of share on the podcast today, and just wanted to kind of break down some of those fears that you guys have about thinking that, it's unattainable to, start your own business, set up your own business, because there's all this legal stuff involved. And again, like I said, it couldn't be further from the truth. I've been doing a promotion on giving away our free Chefpreneur ebook lately. And, I want to encourage you guys, if you guys haven't downloaded the ebook, you guys need to download it. It's a great resource. It's the ultimate guide of giving you an overview of how to start your own personal chef business from start to finish. And you'll find the link in the description here of this podcast episode, and you just click on that link. You can go ahead. It'll take you to a page. You'll put your name and email in there, and you can get this free ebook resource. And, I wrote this book. It's about 25 pages long, and it discusses kind of everything that I'm telling you through the podcast. But again, it's giving you this beautiful guide that you can just look at, and you could see that to actually start your own business is not that complicated. There's not all these moving parts that need to happen, and it's not this scary monster. You can actually accomplish this. You can go out there and create your own and set up your own business and crush it as a chef, as a cook, and be your own boss. So that's all I have for the podcast today. I really appreciate you guys tuning in. I'm so excited about continuing these podcast episodes. Please, I want you guys to give me a comment, send us an email at the podcast at chefpreneurprogram.com. If you guys have any suggestions that you want to make on anything that you want me to discuss in the podcast, I'd love to hear from you guys, and just any general feedback you guys have about what you want to know about, what you want to learn, what you want to hear in this podcast. So thank you so much again for tuning in, and I can't wait to talk to you guys and be with you guys next week. Hope you guys have a good one. Take care.
Thank you for listening to the Chefpreneur podcast, where we want to educate, motivate, and inspire as many chefs to become their own boss. Please subscribe to the podcast and join us every week to be part of the movement. To sign up for our free online training, visit becomeachefpreneur.com.